There's a whisper in the human heart, a tremor that runs through each of us when we find ourselves on the ground. Not by choice, never by choice. The cold, hard impact of reality against our hopes. The sting of failure, sharp and sudden, or the slow grinding erosion of our spirit by relentless waves of adversity. We've all known it. That moment when the air is knocked from our lungs, when the path forward dissolves into an impenetrable fog, and the simple act of standing seems an insurmountable task. The world doesn't pause its relentless spin for our private grief, for our personal defeat. It moves on, and the silence from our corner of the arena can feel deafening. This isn't a story about avoiding the fall. For to live is to stumble, to misjudge, to reach for a rung that isn't there. To dream boldly is to invite the possibility of a spectacular crash. No, this is not about how to sidestep the tumbles that are an inevitable part of any journey worth undertaking. This is about what happens after. After the dust settles, after the echoes of the crash fade, after the world has seemingly moved on without you. This is about the quiet conversation you have with yourself in that desolate space. This is about the truth of your own unbreakable spirit. There's an ancient wisdom, a phrase carried through generations, whispered by warriors and artisans, by mothers and fathers who understood the unyielding rhythm of effort and outcome. Fall 7 times, rise 8. Nanakorobi Yaoki. It's more than a proverb. It's a promise, a testament to the profound capacity not just to endure, but to become more through the very act of enduring. It isn't about the 7 falls. The world is full of those who can count their tumbles. It's about the 8th rising, that singular defiant act of will that separates the vanquished from the victor, the forgotten from the forever remembered. Resilience. We speak of it often. We admire it in others, the stoic figures who weather impossible storms. But let us be clear, resilience is not a suit of armor gifted at birth. It is not a charmed immunity to pain or despair. It is a muscle, forged in the fires of tribulation, tempered by the cold shock of disappointment, shaped by the conscious, deliberate choice to stand up when every fiber of your being screams to remain down. It's the grit that grinds down mountains, the quiet resolve that outlasts the loudest tyrannies. Think of the landscape of your own life. The moments you were certain you could not go on. The rejections that felt like a final judgment. The losses that carved out a space within you raw and aching. And yet you are here, listening, breathing. Some part of you, however small, chose to rise. Perhaps not with a lion's roar, perhaps only with a whispered, "I will try again." That, my friend, is the genesis of your power. That is the 8th rising beginning to stir. It begins, as all great transformations do not in the world outside, but in the world within. In the sacred, often chaotic space of your own mind. How do you speak to yourself when you are down? Is your inner voice a relentless critic replaying every misstep, cataloging every flaw? Or is it the calm, firm voice of a trusted mentor, acknowledging the pain, but refusing to let it define the future? The fall is an event. Staying down is a decision often rooted in the stories we tell ourselves about that event. A mind that succumbs to the narrative of defeat sees every setback as a confirmation of inadequacy. I knew I wasn't good enough. This always happens to me. There's no point. These are the chains we forge ourselves, link by painful link, anchoring us to the ground. But a resilient mind, the mind that understands the rhythm of 7 falls and 8 rises, tells a different story. It sees failure not as a verdict, but as feedback. It sees adversity not as a barrier, but as a bridge to a strength previously unknown. Consider Thomas Edison, a name synonymous with relentless invention. Before he gifted the world with the incandescent light bulb, He navigated a labyrinth of 1,000, some say 10,000, failed experiments. Imagine the sheer weight of that. Each attempt a flicker of hope, followed by darkness. Lesser men would have abandoned the quest, declared it impossible, cursed the shadows. But Edison's mind was not tuned to the frequency of defeat. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That wasn't mere bravado. It was a profound reframing. Each fall was not a failure to create light, but a successful discovery of what didn't create light, narrowing the path to what would. He was rising in thought and method and understanding long before the filament finally glowed. This is the alchemy of mindset. It transforms the lead of despair into the gold of determination. It whispers, "This is hard," not "This is impossible." It says, "I am hurt," not "I am broken." It allows for the pain, for the grief of the fall, but it does not grant that pain permission to build a permanent residence in your soul. It is the understanding that this moment, this defeat, this setback, however profound, is but one scene in a much larger, still unfolding epic. Your epic. And the pen is still in your hand. The eighth rising is not an act of magic. It's an act of profound self-belief, nurtured by a mindset that refuses to be extinguished. It's the quiet understanding that your value isn't diminished by the dirt on your knees, but magnified by the courage it takes to push yourself back up. The world may count your falls, but it's the rising that it will remember. It's the rising that changes everything. It's the rising that proves you are more than the sum of your stumbles. You are the architect of your own ascent, and the foundation of that ascent is built first in the unshakable conviction of your mind. It's time to check that foundation. Is it solid? Is it ready for the inevitable tremors? Because the winds will blow, the ground will shake. That is a given. Your response, however, is entirely beautifully and powerfully up to you. This power of mindset, this ability to reframe the narrative of our falls, finds its deepest roots in something even more fundamental belief. Not a fleeting wish, not a fragile hope pinned on circumstance, but a profound, unwavering conviction in your inherent capacity to overcome, to adapt, to ultimately prevail. It is the bedrock upon which the eighth rising is built. Without it, the seventh fall becomes the final resting place. Think of belief as the unseen current that pulls a ship through a storm-tossed sea. The waves crash, the winds howl, the stars are obscured, but the captain holds a course driven by the certainty that land lies beyond the horizon, that the vessel is sound, that the crew, your inner resources, is capable. This belief is not born of arrogance, nor is it blind to the dangers. Rather, it is a quiet, fierce confidence that resides deep within a knowing that transcends the immediate chaos. Abraham Lincoln, a man whose life was a tapestry of profound loss and crushing defeat, before he ascended to lead a nation through its darkest hour. He lost businesses, faced numerous electoral defeats, suffered periods of debilitating depression. The falls were many, and they were brutal. What force then compelled him to rise time and time again? It was a deep-seated belief. A belief in the principles he championed, yes, but also crucially a belief in his own ability, despite all evidence to the contrary, to eventually make a difference. Had he succumbed to the narrative of his failures, had his belief wavered and died, after the fifth or sixth fall, history would be unrecognizably impoverished. His eighth rise and then some change the world. But how is such belief cultivated, especially when the world seems determined to prove you wrong? It is not a passive inheritance, it is an active creation. It begins with a conscious decision to feed the part of you that yearns to get up, rather than the part that whispers of surrender. It is nurtured by small acts of courage. Each time you face a fear, however minor, and act in spite of it, you deposit strength into your bank of belief. Each time you honor a commitment to yourself, especially when it's difficult, you reinforce the conviction that you are someone who can be counted on, by yourself first and foremost. Consider the story of Walt Disney. Today, his name is a global empire synonymous with magic and imagination. But the path was paved with rejections and bankruptcies. He was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. His first animation studio, Laugh-O-Gram, went bankrupt. He faced relentless skepticism when he proposed a feature-length animated film, Snow White, in an era when cartoons were mere novelties. He fell hard and often. Yet within him burned an unshakable belief in the power of his vision and the joy his creations could bring. This belief wasn't just a vague optimism. It was a driving force that propelled him to get up, to try again, to innovate, to persuade, to literally animate his dreams into reality. His belief was infectious, eventually drawing in the talent and resources he needed. He rose not just for himself, but he lifted an entire industry with him. This kind of belief is not about denying the reality of the fall. It's about refusing to let the fall have the last word. It's about looking at the wreckage and seeing not just an ending, but the raw materials for a new beginning. It's the voice that says, yes, this happened. And what is the lesson here? What is the opportunity concealed within this adversity? It's about understanding that your past failures are not prophecies of your future, but rather the tuition fees paid for wisdom. When you are on the ground when the seventh fall has left you bruised and disheartened, it is this cultivated belief that will be your first ally. It will remind you of past victories, however small. It will point to the strengths you forged in previous fires. It will whisper of the unique spark within you that the world still needs. This belief isn't about ignoring the odds. It's about making yourself the exception to the odds through sheer force of will and unwavering faith in your own potential. It is the seed of greatness that lies dormant within every human soul. But seeds require nurturing. They require the light of positive self-talk, the water of consistent effort, the fertile soil of a supportive inner environment. Protect your belief from the droughts of doubt and the pests of negativity, both internal and external. Shield it, feed it, let it take root and grow strong. For when it is strong, it becomes an unshakable fortress against the storms of life. It becomes the engine of your eighth rise, the silent, powerful force that lifts you from the ashes time and time again, each ascent making you more than you were before. It's the quiet hum beneath the noise of defeat assuring you that the story isn't over. It is only just beginning. And with that belief firmly taking root, a new clarity begins to emerge from the fog of despair. With belief as your anchor and a resilient mindset as your compass, the path to rising again begins to illuminate. But to what end? Simply getting to your feet is motion, not necessarily progress. The eighth rise demands more than just a return to a previous state. It calls for an ascent towards something meaningful. This is where the profound power of clarity and vision enters the narrative of your resilience. For when you fall and the world blurs around you, a clear vision is the lighthouse cutting through the densest fog, the North Star guiding you when all other landmarks have vanished. What are you rising for? What is the purpose that pulls you forward, that makes the struggle of getting back on your feet not just bearable but necessary? Without clarity, the effort can feel aimless, a desperate scrambling in the dark. With clarity, every ounce of effort becomes focused, purposeful, and imbued with a deeper significance. Vision is not merely seeing what is, it is seeing what can be. It's the ability to hold a picture of your desired future so vividly in your mind's eye that it becomes a magnetic force drawing you towards it, especially when the terrain is treacherous. Think of a mountaineer caught in a sudden whiteout. Disoriented, cold, the path obliterated. Panic is a seductive whisper. But the seasoned climber has studied the maps, visualized the summit, memorized the feel of the rock, the direction of the prevailing winds. This internal clarity, this vision of the goal, becomes their lifeline. They may be temporarily blinded, but their inner sight remains acute. They know which way is up, even if they can only take one painstaking step at a time. That is the power of a clear vision when you are on the ground. It orients you. It gives your struggle direction. Henry Ford, before revolutionizing transportation and industry, faced multiple business failures. His early ventures into automobile manufacturing sputtered and died. The falls were significant, public, and undoubtedly painful. But Ford possessed an unwavering vision, a horseless carriage that was affordable for the common man, a vehicle that could liberate people, connect communities, transform society. This vision wasn't just a business plan. It was a deeply held conviction about a better future. It was this clarity that fueled his relentless experimentation, his refinement of the assembly line, his unwavering pursuit of efficiency and affordability. Each fall, each bankruptcy was a painful lesson, but it didn't extinguish the vision. Instead, it sharpened it, refined his approach. He rose not just to build a car, but to realize a world reshaped by his creation. Clarity of vision isn't about having all the answers. It's not about knowing every step of the journey from the 7th fall to the 8th rise. It's about knowing the destination. It's about understanding the core values that drive you, the principles you refuse to compromise, the impact you wish to make. This internal compass is what keeps you from wandering aimlessly after a setback. It allows you to assess, does this path, however difficult, still lead towards my ultimate vision? If yes, then the struggle has meaning. If no, then the fall provides an opportunity to recalibrate, to find a new path towards that same guiding star. How do you cultivate this clarity, especially when the dust of failure clouds your judgment? It begins with introspection. Quiet moments of reflection away from the noise and the demands. Ask yourself the hard questions. What truly matters to me? What kind of life do I want to build? What legacy do I want to leave? Journaling, meditation conversations with trusted mentors. These can be powerful tools for unearthing the vision that lies within. Sometimes the fall itself can be the catalyst for profound clarity. It strips away the non-essential, forcing you to confront what is truly important. In the silence of defeat, the whispers of your deepest aspirations can often be heard most clearly. This vision must be more than a vague aspiration. It needs to be made vivid, almost tangible. Write it down, describe it in detail. What does it look like, feel like, sound like? Who are you when you have achieved it? The more real it becomes in your mind, the more powerful its pull will be. This isn't about idle daydreaming. It's about strategic imagination. It's about creating a mental blueprint for your ascent. When you have fallen and the temptation to stay down is strong, this clear vision acts as a lifeline. It reminds you why the effort of rising is worthwhile. It reframes the pain of the present as an investment in a brighter future. It provides the context for your struggle. You are not just enduring, you are progressing. You are not just recovering, you are advancing towards something magnificent, something of your own choosing. The Japanese proverb speaks of rising 8 times. Each rise is an affirmation of life, of potential. But imagine if that 8th rise and every rise before it was fueled by a compelling personal vision. The ascent becomes not just an act of defiance against gravity, but a joyful surge towards a predetermined peak. The world may knock you down 7 times, but with a clear vision held firmly in your heart, you will always find the strength, the reason, and the direction for that 8th rise. And it is this vision, This deeply personal understanding of where you are going that breathes life into your purpose. This clarity of vision, the knowing of where you are headed, naturally intertwines with an even deeper question, the resonant hum beneath all sustained effort. Why? What is the driving force? The profound internal motivation that makes the struggle worthwhile, that transforms mere existence into a passionate pursuit. This is the realm of purpose. If vision is the map, purpose is the fuel in your engine, the very reason you embark on the journey at all. When you fall 7 times, it is a compelling purpose that will ignite the unyielding resolve to rise that 8th time and then some. Purpose is the silent architect of enduring greatness. It's the invisible hand that guides you through the darkest valleys, the unwavering voice that whispers, "This matters," even when evidence to the contrary seems overwhelming. It transcends personal gain, connecting your individual struggle to something larger than yourself. A cause, a principle, a service to others, the betterment of a community, the advancement of an idea. When your why is powerful enough, you will find the how, even after repeated setbacks. Think of the great social reformers, the scientists who toiled in obscurity for decades, the artists who poured their souls into their work with no guarantee of recognition. What kept them going through endless opposition, through poverty, through ridicule? It was a purpose that burned so brightly within them that it illuminated their path even when no one else could see it. It was a sense that their work, their struggle, had a significance beyond their own comfort or immediate reward. Consider the life of Mahatma Gandhi. His purpose was monumental, the liberation of a nation through nonviolent resistance. He faced imprisonment, beatings, the constant threat of death, and the immense challenge of uniting a diverse and often divided populace. The falls were countless, the setbacks relentless. What fueled his unwavering perseverance? It was a purpose rooted in an unshakable belief in justice and human dignity and the power of peaceful defiance. This purpose was not for himself, it was for millions. And it was this profound sense of why that enabled him to rise again and again, inspiring a nation to do the same, proving that even the mightiest empires can be challenged by the power of a purpose-driven soul. A purpose-driven life finds resilience not in the absence of falls, but in the meaning extracted from them. When your actions are aligned with a deeply felt purpose, a failure is not a personal indictment, but a strategic lesson. This approach didn't work for my purpose. What will the focus shifts from ego to objective? The pain of the fall is still felt, but it's contextualized. It's part of the price of pursuing something that truly matters. How then do you discover or clarify your purpose, especially in a world that often prioritizes the superficial over the substantial? It rarely arrives as a sudden revelation, a clap of thunder from the heavens. More often, it is uncovered through a process of exploration, reflection, and engagement with the world around you. What are the problems that break your heart? What are the injustices that stir your indignation? What unique talents or passions do you possess that could be channeled to address these issues? Where does your deep gladness meet the world's deep hunger? Purpose can be found in the grand gesture or the quiet act of service. It can be in raising a family with integrity and love and building a business that operates ethically and creates value in dedicating your life to a craft that brings beauty or understanding to the world, in advocating for those whose voices are not heard. The scale of the purpose is less important than its authenticity and its power to motivate you. When you are on the ground, feeling the sting of that 7th fall, a strong sense of purpose is like a deep well from which you can draw strength when all other reserves seem dry. It says, "It's not just about me. There is something more at stake here." This perspective shift can be incredibly empowering. It lifts you out of the smallness of your personal disappointment and connects you to a larger current of meaning. The truth is, the eighth rise becomes almost inevitable when it's not just for you. When you know that your getting up serves something beyond your own ambition, something that touches other lives, that contributes to a greater good, the motivation becomes intrinsic and immensely powerful. It transforms the struggle from a burden into a privilege. You are not just fighting to get back on your feet, you are fighting for your why. This purpose doesn't make you immune to pain or discouragement, but it provides a reason to walk through it. It provides the context for your scars, transforming them from marks of shame into badges of honor, testaments to your commitment. It ensures that when you rise that eighth time, you rise not just with renewed strength, but with renewed conviction, your eyes fixed not just on your own feet, but on the horizon of your deepest calling. And to walk that path, to rise consistently towards that purpose, requires another vital element, the quiet power of discipline. With a clear vision charting the course and a profound purpose fueling the journey, the act of rising 8 times ceases to be a mere reaction to falling and becomes a deliberate, structured ascent. Yet vision and purpose, however powerful, can remain ethereal dreams without the grounding force of discipline. Discipline is the bridge between aspiration and achievement. It is the daily, often unglamorous commitment to the small actions that compounded over time lead to extraordinary results. It is the quiet engine of resilience, the consistent practice that transforms the intention to rise into the reality of having risen. Discipline is not punishment as some may perceive it. It is not a joyless, rigid adherence to a set of rules imposed from without. True discipline, the kind that forges champions and builds empires of the soul, is an act of self-love. It is the choice to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it, because you honor the future self you are committed to becoming. It is the understanding that momentary discomfort is a small price to pay for long-term strength and achievement. When you've fallen for the 7th time, when weariness seeps into your bones, and the siren song of surrender is at its most seductive, it is discipline that will be your staunchest ally. Emotion is fickle. Motivation ebbs and flows like the tide. But discipline is a steadfast anchor. It's the commitment to your routine, to your practice, to your principles, regardless of the weather in your soul. It's the voice that says, the feeling will pass. The commitment remains. Let's go to work. Think of the master artisan honing their craft over decades. The writer who shows up to the blank page every single day, whether inspiration strikes or not. The athlete who adheres to a grueling training regimen year in and year out through victories and defeats. Their genius is not solely in their talent, but in their unwavering discipline. It is this consistent application of effort, this dedication to the process, that allows them to push the boundaries of their capabilities to recover from setbacks and to achieve levels of mastery that seem superhuman to the undisciplined eye. Consider the discipline of someone like Benjamin Franklin, a statesman, inventor, writer, philosopher. His contributions were vast and varied, but underlying his myriad achievements was a rigorous commitment to self-improvement and a structured approach to his days. He famously outlined a plan for moral perfection, tracking his progress on 13 virtues. He managed his time meticulously, allocating hours for work, study, and reflection. This wasn't about soulless regimentation. It was about creating the conditions for his own flourishing, ensuring that his energy and talents were directed purposefully. His discipline wasn't a cage. It was the scaffolding upon which he built a monumental life. When he faced setbacks, and he faced many, his underlying structure of disciplined habits provided the stability to reassess, learn, and press forward. The 8th rising, and every rise that follows, is often not a dramatic, sudden surge of power. More frequently, it is the result of countless small disciplined choices made in the quiet moments. The choice to get out of bed when you'd rather hide. The choice to take that first difficult step, even when your legs feel like lead. The choice to focus on the task at hand, even when distractions abound. The choice to learn from the fall rather than merely lamenting it. How do you cultivate this essential quality? Start small. Discipline, like a muscle, is built through consistent exercise. Choose one area where you want to improve one small habit you want to instill. Commit to it for a set period, say 30 days. Track your progress. Forgive yourself for the inevitable imperfections, but always return to the practice. The act of repeatedly choosing the disciplined path, even in small ways, begins to reshape your identity. You become someone who follows through, someone who can rely on themselves. Discipline is also about creating systems and structures that support your goals. If your goal is to learn from your falls, then discipline might involve regularly scheduling time for reflection and analysis. If your goal is to maintain physical resilience, discipline means adhering to an exercise and nutrition plan. It's about removing the need for constant decision-making in areas where a pre-established routine can serve you better, freeing up your mental energy for more complex challenges. When you are down, the weight of the world pressing upon you, it is the habit of discipline that will help you push back. It will ensure that even if your spirit momentarily falters, your actions continue to move you, however incrementally, in the direction of your vision and purpose. It is the understanding that mastery is not an event, but a process, and that process is built on the bedrock of daily disciplined effort. Fall 7 times, rise 8. The rising is not accidental, it is earned. It is the culmination of a mindset that reframes failure, a belief that sustains hope, a vision that directs effort, a purpose that fuels passion, and the unwavering discipline that translates all of these into consistent, constructive action. It is this discipline that ensures the 8th rise is not just a recovery, but a step forward on the path to becoming who you were meant to be. And this disciplined commitment naturally leads to the most crucial element of any comeback-taking decisive action: